Marcus Chen was 10 years old when he finally saved enough money to buy his first drone. He had worked hard for 18 months doing small jobs around the neighborhood. He mowed lawns in summer, raked leaves in fall, and shoveled snow in winter. Every dollar he earned went into a glass jar he kept on his bedroom shelf. Sometimes he would count the money at night, dreaming about the day he could finally buy the drone he wanted. The drone was not the most expensive one in the store, but it was perfect for Marcus. It had a camera, bright LED lights, and could fly up to 400 feet high. The best part was that Marcus could program it using an app on his tablet. He spent hours learning how to make it do tricks, how to take pictures from the sky, and how to control the lights. His favorite thing was making the lights blink in different patterns. Marcus lived with his grandfather, William. His parents had died in a car accident when Marcus was 6 years old, and Grandpa William had raised him ever since. William was 72 years old and had served in the military when he was young. He had gray hair, kind blue eyes, and always wore his old military cap when they went outside. William loved spending time with his grandson. They did everything together. Every Saturday, if the weather was nice, William and Marcus would go on an adventure. Sometimes they went fishing at the lake. Other times they visited museums or worked on building model airplanes in the garage. But their favorite thing to do was hiking in the forest near their home in rural Pennsylvania. There was a special spot they loved near Laurel Ridge, where the trees were tall and the air smelled like pine needles. On this particular Saturday morning, the sun was shining bright and the sky was clear blue without a single cloud. Marcus woke up early, excited to show his grandfather what his drone could do. He had just installed new LED lights on it the week before, and he had been practicing a special light pattern all week. He wanted to show Grandpa William how the drone could spell out messages in the sky using the blinking lights. At breakfast, Marcus could barely sit still. He ate his cereal quickly while talking about all the things he wanted to do with the drone that day. William smiled and listened, drinking his coffee slowly. He loved seeing Marcus so happy and excited. The old man had noticed that his chest had been feeling tight lately, and sometimes he felt short of breath when he climbed stairs. But he did not want to worry Marcus, and he did not want to miss their Saturday adventure. He decided he would see a doctor on Monday. They packed their backpacks carefully. William put in sandwiches, water bottles, and a first aid kit. Marcus packed his drone, the controller, his tablet, and extra batteries. He checked everything 3 times to make sure he had not forgotten anything important. William put on his hiking boots and his old military cap. Marcus wore his favorite blue jacket with lots of pockets where he could keep small things. The drive to Laurel Ridge took about 30 minutes. William drove his old pickup truck slowly along the country roads. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, looking out the window at the farms and fields passing by. He held the drone case carefully on his lap, making sure it would not get bumped or damaged. They sang along to old songs on the radio, and William told stories about when he was in the military and flew in helicopters over forests just like the one they were going to visit. When they arrived at the forest trail, there were only 2 other cars in the parking area. It was still early in the morning and most people had not arrived yet. Marcus and William got out of the truck and put on their backpacks. The air was cool and fresh. Birds were singing in the trees, and somewhere in the distance they could hear a stream running over rocks. They started walking on the trail. It was a path they had walked many times before. William knew every turn and every landmark. He pointed out different types of trees to Marcus and showed him animal tracks in the soft dirt. Marcus listened and learned, but he was also thinking about flying his drone. He wanted to get to their special clearing where there was enough open space for the drone to fly high, without hitting any branches. The trail went up a small hill, and then down into a valley. They walked for about 45 minutes, taking their time and enjoying the forest. William stopped several times to rest and drink water. Marcus did not notice that his grandfather was breathing harder than usual, or that he was moving slower than normal. The boy was too excited about reaching their destination. Finally, they arrived at the clearing. It was a beautiful open space surrounded by tall trees. The grass was green and soft, and wildflowers grew around the edges. A large flat rock sat in the middle where they always stopped to rest and eat their lunch. This was their special place, the spot where they had spent so many happy Saturdays together. Marcus immediately took out his drone and set it up. He turned on the controller and waited for it to connect to the drone. The little machine made a soft humming sound as it powered up. The LED lights blinked once to show it was ready. Marcus looked at his grandfather with a big smile on his face. William sat down on the flat rock to watch. He was tired from the hike, more tired than he should have been. His chest felt tight again, and there was a dull ache in his left arm. But he pushed these feelings aside. He wanted to see Marcus fly his drone. He wanted to see the light show his grandson had been practicing all week. Marcus launched the drone into the air. It rose smoothly, climbing higher and higher above the trees. The sound of the propellers was like a quiet buzz. Marcus moved the controller carefully, making the drone do loops and figure eights in the sky. Then he activated the special light program he had created. The LED lights on the drone began to blink in a pattern, spelling out the words "I love you, Grandpa" in Morse code that he had learned from one of William's old military books. William watched from the rock below, shading his eyes from the sun to see better. His heart swelled with love and pride for his grandson. This boy had been through so much in his young life, losing his parents and having to live with an old man. But Marcus had grown into a smart, kind, and creative child. William felt blessed to be his grandfather. Marcus was about to bring the drone back down when he heard a strange sound behind him. He turned around and saw his grandfather slide off the rock and fall to the ground. The old man's face was pale and twisted in pain. His hand was clutching his chest and he was trying to say something, but no words came out. The drone controller fell from Marcus's hands. He ran to his grandfather and dropped to his knees beside him. William's eyes were open but unfocused. His breathing was shallow and rapid. Marcus had never been so scared in his entire life. He grabbed his grandfather's hand and squeezed it tight, calling his name over and over. Marcus reached for his phone in his jacket pocket with shaking hands. He tried to call for help, but when he looked at the screen, he saw the words that made his heart sink even more. No signal. They were too deep in the forest, too far from any cell tower. The phone was useless. Tears started running down Marcus's face. He did not know what to do. His grandfather needed help right away, but there was no way to call anyone. They were miles from the parking lot, miles from the nearest road, and Marcus did not think he could leave his grandfather alone long enough to run for help. What if Grandpa William stopped breathing while he was gone? What if he never saw him alive again? Marcus looked around desperately, hoping to see another hiker, anyone who could help. But the clearing was empty. The forest was silent except for the birds and the wind in the trees. They were completely alone. Marcus knelt beside his grandfather on the grass, his mind racing with fear and panic. William's face had turned gray and his breathing sounded wrong, like he was struggling to get air into his lungs. The boy had never felt so helpless in his entire life. He was just a kid, alone in the forest with no way to call for help and no idea what to do. He looked at his phone again, hoping that maybe a signal would appear. Nothing. Just the empty bars at the top of the screen mocking him. He thought about running back to the parking lot, but that would take at least 45 minutes, maybe longer if he got lost or hurt. What would happen to Grandpa William while he was gone? Marcus could not leave him. He just could not. Tears blurred his vision as he held his grandfather's hand. William's eyes opened slightly and he tried to speak, but the words came out as barely a whisper. Marcus leaned closer to hear. "It's okay," William was trying to say. "You're a good boy." Those simple words made Marcus cry even harder. This could not be happening. Not to his grandfather. Not to the person who had taken care of him and loved him for the past 4 years. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and tried to think clearly. His grandfather had always taught him to stay calm in emergencies. "Panic makes you stupid," William used to say. "Take a breath, look at what you have, and figure out what you can do." Marcus took a deep breath and looked around the clearing. What did he have that could help? His backpack was on the ground a few feet away. Inside were sandwiches, water, and his tablet. None of those things could call for help. Then his eyes fell on something else. The drone controller was lying in the grass where he had dropped it. A few yards away, his drone was sitting on the ground where it had landed when he let go of the controller. The drone. An idea began to form in Marcus's mind. It was a crazy idea, maybe an impossible idea, but it was the only thing he could think of. The drone could fly high, much higher than the trees. If he could send it up above the forest, maybe someone would see it. But who would see a small drone in the middle of nowhere? And even if someone saw it, how would they know it was a call for help? Then Marcus remembered something from one of his grandfather's old military books. The book had a chapter about survival and emergency signals. There was a special code that people used when they needed help. It was called SOS. 3 short signals, 3 long signals, 3 short signals. That pattern meant emergency, meant help needed, meant someone was in trouble. Sailors used it with lights. Pilots used it with radio signals. Could Marcus use it with his drone? His hands were still shaking, but he picked up the controller and turned it on. The drone's lights blinked, showing it was ready to connect. Marcus used his tablet to open the programming app. His grandfather had helped him learn to program the drone's LED lights to do different things. He had made them spell words and create patterns. Could he make them send an SOS signal? Marcus worked quickly, his fingers moving over the tablet screen. He created a new program, 3 short blinks, each 1 second long, 3 long blinks, each 3 seconds long, 3 short blinks again. Then the pattern would repeat. He saved the program and loaded it onto the drone. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He looked at his grandfather again. William's eyes were closed now, but his chest was still moving up and down. He was still breathing. "Hold on, Grandpa," Marcus whispered. "Please hold on. I'm getting help. I promise." Marcus picked up the drone and walked to the center of the clearing. He placed it on the ground and stepped back. With trembling fingers, he activated the light program and then launched the drone into the air. The little machine rose quickly, climbing up past the treetops and into the open sky. Marcus made it go as high as it could go, 400 feet straight up. From the ground, Marcus could see the drone as a small dot against the blue sky, but he could also see the lights. They were blinking the pattern he had programmed. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, over and over again. The LED lights were bright enough to see even in the daylight. Marcus hoped they were bright enough for someone somewhere to notice. But who would see them? They were in the middle of a forest miles from any town. There were no roads nearby, no houses, no people. Marcus thought about airplanes, but he had not seen or heard any planes that morning. Would a passing car on a distant highway see the lights? That seemed impossible. The trees were too tall and the roads were too far away. Marcus tried not to think about these doubts. He had to believe that someone would see the signal. He had to believe that help would come. That was all he could do now. He had done his best. He had used everything he had and everything he knew. Now he just had to wait and hope. He went back to his grandfather's side and sat down next to him. He held William's hand and kept talking to him, even though the old man did not respond. Marcus told him about the signal, about how the drone was sending out a call for help. He told him to stay strong, to keep breathing, to not give up. He told him all the things they would do together when he got better. They would go fishing again. They would build another model airplane. They would come back to this clearing on another Saturday. Minutes passed slowly. Marcus kept looking up at the drone, watching the lights blink their steady pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The battery meter on his controller showed that the drone was using power quickly. Hovering in one place took a lot of energy. The drone might only last 30 minutes, maybe 45 if he was lucky. What would he do when the battery died? He tried not to think about that. He focused on his grandfather instead, checking his pulse like he had learned in a first aid video at school. William's heartbeat was fast and irregular, but it was there. He was still alive. That was what mattered. As long as his grandfather was alive, there was still hope. Marcus opened one of the water bottles and carefully dripped a little water on his grandfather's lips. He did not know if this was the right thing to do, but William's lips looked dry and cracked. The old man's eyelids fluttered slightly when the water touched his mouth. That small movement filled Marcus with relief. His grandfather was still there, still fighting. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Marcus guessed about 15 minutes had passed, though it felt like hours. He looked at the drone again, still hovering faithfully above the trees, still sending its urgent message to the empty sky. The battery was at 60% now. Time was running out, but Marcus refused to bring the drone down. Not yet. Not while there was still power left. Not while there was still a chance. He talked to his grandfather more, telling him stories to keep himself calm. He talked about school, about his friends, about a book he was reading. He talked about how proud he was to be William's grandson, about how lucky he was to have been raised by such a good and kind man. Some of the tears that fell on their joined hands were his grandfather's, slipping from beneath closed eyelids. A bird landed nearby, tilting its head curiously at the boy and the old man. Then it flew away, disappearing into the trees. Marcus watched it go and felt more alone than ever. The forest was so quiet. No voices, no cars, no sounds of people anywhere. Just the wind and the birds and the faint hum of the drone far above. The battery dropped to 40%. Marcus's hope began to fade. Maybe no one would see the signal. Maybe they were too far from everywhere. Maybe this plan had been foolish from the start. But what else could he have done? At least he had tried. At least he had not just sat there doing nothing. He looked down at his grandfather's peaceful face. William looked like he was sleeping, except for the gray color of his skin and the way his breathing was so shallow and fast. Marcus squeezed his hand tighter. "I won't give up, Grandpa," he said out loud. "I won't stop trying. I promise." The drone continued its circle above the clearing, the LED lights flashing their desperate message. 3 short. 3 long. 3 short. Help, emergency. Someone please see us, please. The signal traveled out across the empty forest. Invisible radio waves and bright flashing lights carrying a little boy's hope up into the vast blue sky. Marcus did not know if anyone would ever see it. He did not know if help would come in time. He only knew that he had to keep trying, had to keep believing, because giving up meant accepting that his grandfather might die here in this clearing, and Marcus could not, would not accept that. So he sat and waited and hoped, while above him his small drone continued its lonely vigil, calling out to the world that someone down below needed help desperately. 20 miles away from the forest clearing where Marcus sat with his dying grandfather, a helicopter was flying through the clear blue sky. Inside the helicopter sat Cena, the famous wrestler and actor that millions of people knew from television and movies. But today John was not going to film a scene or appear at a wrestling match. Today he was doing something that mattered more to him than any movie or championship belt. John was on his way to visit a sick child at a hospital in Pittsburgh. The visit was arranged by the Make-A-Wish Foundation, an organization that helped make dreams come true for children with serious illnesses. A 7-year-old boy named Tommy, who had been fighting cancer for 2 years, had one simple wish. He wanted to meet John Cena, his hero, and John had immediately said yes when the foundation called him. He always said yes to these requests. The helicopter had picked John up that morning from a small airport near where he was staying. The flight to Pittsburgh would take about 40 minutes. John sat by the window, looking down at the forests and farms passing below. In his hands he held a folder with information about Tommy. There were photos of the little boy smiling despite being sick, wearing a John Cena t-shirt and cap. There was a letter Tommy had written in shaky handwriting, saying how much he loved watching John on TV and how John's motto, "Never give up," helped him stay strong during his treatments. Reading the letter made John's throat tight with emotion. This was why he did what he did, not for the fame or the money, but for moments like these, for the chance to bring joy to a child who was suffering, for the opportunity to show a brave little kid that his hero cared about him. John had done hundreds of Make-A-Wish visits over the years, and each one touched his heart deeply. The pilot, a man named Dave who had been flying helicopters for 25 years, was talking to John about the route they were taking. Dave pointed out different landmarks below, including the state forest they were currently flying over. "Beautiful country down there," Dave said. "But you wouldn't want to get lost in those woods. Miles and miles of nothing but trees." John nodded, still looking out the window. The forest below looked peaceful and endless. He could see the treetops stretching in every direction, a green carpet with no roads or buildings visible anywhere. Here and there, he could spot a small clearing or a stream catching the sunlight. It was pretty, but Dave was right. If someone got into trouble down there, it would be very hard for anyone to find them. John went back to reading Tommy's file. The boy loved wrestling moves and had memorized all of John's catchphrases. His mother had written a note thanking John for agreeing to visit, explaining how much it meant to their family. John made a mental note to spend as much time with Tommy as the boy wanted, to make this visit special and memorable. He would bring some gifts, take photos, maybe even teach Tommy a few safe wrestling poses if the doctors said it was okay. The helicopter continued flying smoothly through the sky. John looked at his watch. They should arrive at the hospital in about 15 more minutes. He started thinking about what he would say to Tommy, how he could make the boy smile and feel strong. He was so focused on these thoughts that he almost missed it. A small flash of light caught the corner of his eye. John turned his head to look out the window again. There, far below but visible against the dark green forest, was a tiny blinking light. At first, John thought it might be a reflection on the helicopter window, or maybe just a trick of the sunlight. But then he saw it again. Blink, blink, blink. Then a pause. Then blink, 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 but these blinks lasted longer. John leaned forward, pressing his face closer to the window. He watched carefully, and the pattern repeated. 3 short blinks. 3 long blinks. 3 short blinks. His heart started beating faster. He knew that pattern. Anyone who had military training or emergency response training knew that pattern. It was SOS, the International Distress Signal. Someone down there was in trouble. Dave, John said urgently, tapping the pilot's shoulder. Look down there in that clearing. Do you see those lights? Dave glanced down but shook his head. I don't see anything. What lights? There, John pointed. Watch for the pattern. 3 short flashes, then 3 long ones, then 3 short again. It's SOS. Dave looked more carefully this time, and after a moment his eyes widened. You're right. That's definitely SOS. What the heck is that? It looks like it's coming from something small. Maybe up in the air? John stared hard at the blinking lights. It looks like a drone to me. Someone is using a drone to send a distress signal. Dave immediately became serious. His military training kicked in. He had been a helicopter pilot in the Navy before becoming a civilian pilot. If someone is sending SOS, they're in real trouble. We need to check it out. Can we land near there? John asked. Dave studied the forest below. There's a clearing not too far from that signal. I can put us down there, but we need to call this in first. He picked up the radio and contacted the local emergency services, reporting their location and the SOS signal they had spotted. The helicopter banked to the right, turning away from the route to Pittsburgh and heading toward the forest clearing, where the mysterious lights were flashing. John's visit to Tommy would have to wait. Right now, someone below needed help, and they were the only ones who had seen the signal. There was no question in John's mind about what they had to do. His motto was never give up, and he lived by those words. Someone down there had not given up, had found a creative way to call for help. John was not going to ignore that call. As they descended toward the forest, John could see the drone more clearly now. It was a small commercial drone, the kind a kid might have, hovering maybe 400 feet in the air. The LED lights on it were flashing that desperate pattern over and over. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. John felt a chill run down his spine. Who was controlling that drone? And why did they need help so badly? Dave found a clearing about 1/4 of a mile from where the drone was hovering. It was not a perfect landing spot, but it was big enough and flat enough for the helicopter. He brought them down carefully, the helicopter's blades creating a wind that made the grass and small bushes bend and wave. As soon as they touched the ground, John was unbuckling his seatbelt. Be careful, Dave called out. We don't know what's going on out there. John nodded and jumped out of the helicopter. He pulled out his phone and made sure he had it with him. It had a satellite connection that would work even out here in the middle of nowhere. Then he started running toward where he had seen the drone, pushing through bushes and jumping over fallen logs. The forest was thick, and John had to move carefully to avoid tripping or running into low branches. But he was in excellent physical shape from all his training, and he moved quickly. His mind was racing with possibilities. Who had sent that SOS signal? Was someone hurt, lost, in danger from a wild animal? He had no idea, but he was determined to find out. As he ran, he called 911 on his satellite phone. The operator answered, and John quickly explained the situation. He gave them his location coordinates from his phone's GPS and told them about the SOS signal. The operator said they would send an ambulance and rescue team immediately, but it might take time to reach this remote area. John said he would do what he could until help arrived. He could hear the drone now, the faint buzzing sound of its propellers. He was getting close. John pushed through a thick cluster of bushes and stumbled out into a clearing. The first thing he saw was the drone overhead, its light still flashing that urgent pattern. The second thing he saw made his heart sink. On the ground next to a large flat rock, a small boy was kneeling beside an old man who was lying very still. The boy's face was streaked with tears, and he was holding the man's hand. When the boy heard John crashing through the bushes, he looked up with wide, frightened eyes. For a second, neither of them moved. The boy stared at John in shock, probably not believing his eyes. John Cena, the famous wrestler from TV, had just come running out of the forest, but John did not think about his fame right now. He only thought about the old man on the ground who clearly needed help desperately. John ran forward and dropped to his knees on the other side of the old man. "I saw your signal," he said to the boy, his voice calm but urgent. "You did great, buddy. You did amazing. Help is coming."
"What happened?"
The boy's voice was shaking as he spoke. "My grandpa. He fell down. His heart. I called, but there's no signal. I didn't know what to do. I used my drone." John looked at the old man's face. He was unconscious, his skin gray, his breathing shallow and labored. John had done emergency training for his movie roles and for his work with military organizations. He recognized the signs of a heart attack. This man needed help immediately or he might not survive. "You did exactly the right thing," John told Marcus, placing his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your grandpa is going to be okay. You saved his life by sending that signal. You're incredibly brave. Now I need you to stay calm and help me, okay? What's your name?" "Marcus," the boy whispered. "Marcus, I'm John. I'm going to take care of your grandpa. You did the hard part. You got help to come. Now let me do my job." John checked for the old man's pulse. It was there, but it was fast and irregular. He tilted the man's head back slightly to make sure his airway was clear. John pressed 2 fingers against William's neck, feeling for the pulse. It was there, weak but steady enough for now. The old man's skin was cold and clammy to the touch, and his lips had a slight blue tint. John had seen these signs before during his training with military medical personnel. This was serious, very serious. But William was still breathing, still fighting. There was still time. "Marcus, listen to me carefully," John said, looking directly into the boy's frightened eyes. "Has your grandpa ever had heart problems before?" Marcus nodded quickly, tears still running down his cheeks. "He has pills. For his heart. They're in his backpack, but I don't know which ones." "Show me the backpack," John said. Marcus scrambled to his feet and grabbed the backpack that was lying a few yards away. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely unzip it. John gently took it from him and opened it himself. Inside, he found a small first aid kit, sandwiches wrapped in plastic, water bottles, and in the front pocket, 2 prescription pill bottles. John read the labels. One was for high blood pressure, the other for heart rhythm problems. Both were prescribed to William Chen. John pulled out his phone and took pictures of the prescription labels. He would need to give this information to the paramedics when they arrived. Then he set the bottles aside where he could find them quickly if needed. He went back to checking William's condition, monitoring his breathing and pulse every few seconds. The old man's breathing was getting more labored. John made a quick decision. He had learned CPR and basic life support for several roles in movies. But more importantly, he had refreshed these skills regularly through his charity work with first responders and military veterans. If William's heart stopped, John would need to start chest compressions immediately. "Dave," John called out loudly, "how far away is that ambulance?" Dave's voice came back from where he stood at the edge of the clearing. "They said about 18 minutes now. They're coming as fast as they can." 18 minutes. That was a long time. Too long for someone having a heart attack. John knew he had to keep William stable until the paramedics arrived. He also knew that Marcus needed him to stay calm and confident. The boy was terrified, and seeing an adult panic would make everything worse. John looked at Marcus and gave him what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Your grandpa is tough, isn't he?" Marcus nodded, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. "He was in the military. He flew in helicopters. No kidding?" John said, keeping his voice steady and warm. "That's pretty cool. I bet he's got some great stories. And I bet he's a fighter just like you. You know what my motto is, Marcus?" The boy nodded again. "Never give up," he whispered. John could tell that Marcus recognized him now, had probably known who he was from the moment he appeared. But the boy was too scared about his grandfather to care about meeting someone famous. "That's right," John said. "Never give up. And your grandpa hasn't given up. Look, he's still breathing. He's still fighting. And we're going to fight with him, okay? You and me together. We're not going to let him give up." Marcus moved closer and sat down next to John. "Is he going to die?" The question was small and scared. The voice of a child who had already lost too much in his young life. John wanted to promise that everything would be fine, but he knew better than to make promises he might not be able to keep. Instead, he said, "We're doing everything we can for him. And you already did the most important thing. You got help. That drone signal you sent, that was brilliant. I saw it from the helicopter up in the sky. Without that signal, we never would have known you needed help. You saved your grandpa's life, Marcus." The boy looked up at the drone still hovering above them, its battery getting lower but still faithfully sending out its SOS pattern. The lights were not as bright now in the midday sun, but they were still blinking. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. "I learned about SOS from Grandpa's old books," Marcus said quietly. "He taught me lots of things." "He's a good teacher then," John replied. "And you're a good student. Smart kid like you using what you learned to solve a problem. That takes courage." John kept one hand on William's wrist, monitoring his pulse constantly. With his other hand, he pulled out his phone and checked for the ambulance's progress. They had sent him a link to track the emergency vehicles, and he could see that they were getting closer but still at least 15 minutes away. The roads out here were narrow and winding. The ambulance could only go so fast. William's eyelids fluttered slightly. John leaned closer. "Mr. Chen, can you hear me? You're going to be okay. Help is coming. Your grandson is right here. He's safe." The old man's eyes opened just a crack. His lips moved, trying to form words, but no sound came out. John could see the fear and confusion in those eyes. William did not know who this stranger was or what was happening. "It's okay," John said softly. "My name is John. I'm here to help. You had some heart trouble, but we're getting you to a hospital. Just try to stay calm and keep breathing. Nice and slow. That's it. You're doing great." Marcus moved to where his grandfather could see him. "I'm here, Grandpa." "It's me, Marcus. You're going to be okay. John Cena came to help us."
Can you believe it?
John Cena. At the mention of John's name, William's eyes widened slightly. Even in his confused and pained state, he seemed to recognize the name. His hand moved weakly, reaching for Marcus. The boy grabbed it and held it tight. "I got help, Grandpa," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I used my drone like you taught me. I used the SOS signal from your book." And John saw it. He saw it from way up in the sky. A tiny smile appeared on William's gray face. John could see the pride in the old man's eyes even through the pain. He was proud of his grandson for being smart and brave. That love between them was clear and powerful, and it made John even more determined to make sure William survived this. John checked his watch again. 12 more minutes. He continued monitoring William's vital signs, noting that his breathing was becoming slightly more regular. That was good. Maybe the worst had passed. Maybe William's heart was stabilizing on its own. But John knew better than to relax. Heart attacks could be unpredictable. William was not out of danger yet. To keep Marcus distracted and calm, John started asking him questions about the drone. How long had he been saving for it? What was his favorite thing to do with it? How did he learn to program the lights? Marcus answered in short, quiet sentences at first, but as he talked about something he loved, his voice grew a little stronger. "I worked for 18 months, Marcus explained. Mowed lawns and stuff. Grandpa helped me learn about electronics. We built model airplanes together, so I already knew some things about remote controls and batteries." "That's impressive," John said, and he meant it. "When I was 10, I could barely program my TV remote. And you're up here programming drones and sending emergency signals. Your grandpa must be really proud of you." Marcus looked down at William. "He's the best grandpa in the world. He took care of me when my parents died. He teaches me stuff and takes me on adventures every Saturday. This is our special place. We come here all the time." John felt his throat tighten with emotion. This boy had been through so much, lost his parents, and now his grandfather was fighting for his life. But Marcus was strong. He had not fallen apart. He had found a solution, had used his knowledge and his resources to call for help in the most creative way possible. That took remarkable courage and intelligence for a child his age. The sound of sirens finally reached them, distant but getting closer. John felt relief wash over him. The ambulance was almost there. He called Dave on his phone. "Can you go out to the trail and guide them in? They might not know exactly where we are." "On it," Dave replied, and John heard the pilot jogging away through the forest. "Hear that, Mr. Chen?" John said to William. "The ambulance is here. You're going to be okay. Just hold on a little bit longer." Marcus was crying again, but these were tears of relief. "They're coming, Grandpa. The doctors are coming." John squeezed the boy's shoulder. "You did good, Marcus. You did everything right. Your grandpa is lucky to have you." The drone above them finally ran out of battery. The lights stopped blinking and the small machine descended slowly, landing softly in the grass about 20 feet away. Its job was done. The message had been sent and received. Help had come. Within minutes, paramedics came rushing into the clearing carrying equipment and a stretcher. John quickly briefed them on William's condition, showed them the pictures of his prescriptions, and told them everything he had observed. The paramedics worked quickly and efficiently, checking William's heart rate, putting an oxygen mask on his face, and starting an IV line in his arm. One of the paramedics, a woman with kind eyes, knelt down next to Marcus. "You're his grandson?" Marcus nodded. "You saved his life," she said simply. "If you hadn't gotten help when you did, this would have been a very different story. You're a hero." Marcus did not feel like a hero. He just felt scared and tired. But he held his grandfather's hand as the paramedics prepared to move him onto the stretcher. William's eyes were closed again, but his color looked a little better now that he had oxygen. The paramedics said his vital signs were stabilizing. As they lifted William onto the stretcher, John walked beside Marcus. "I'm going to ride with you in the ambulance, okay?" The ambulance ride to the hospital felt endless to Marcus. He sat in a small fold-down seat near the back doors, watching the paramedics work on his grandfather. They had all sorts of machines connected to William now, monitoring his heart and breathing. The oxygen mask covered most of his face and his eyes stayed closed. The ambulance swayed and bounced as it rushed down the country roads, its sirens wailing. John sat next to Marcus, one hand on the boy's shoulder. He did not say much during the ride, just stayed close and steady, a solid presence in the chaos. Every time Marcus looked like he might start crying again, John would squeeze his shoulder gently, a silent reminder that he was not alone. The female paramedic, whose name tag said Rodriguez, kept checking William's vital signs and writing notes on a clipboard. At one point, she looked over at Marcus and gave him a small smile. "His heart rhythm is looking better," she said. "That's a good sign." Marcus wanted to ask if that meant his grandfather would be okay, but he was afraid of the answer. What if she said she did not know? What if she said it was still too dangerous to tell? So Marcus just nodded and kept quiet, holding onto the edge of his seat as the ambulance sped around a curve. John noticed the boy's white knuckles and tense shoulders. "Hey, Marcus," he said quietly. "You know what helps me when I'm worried?" Marcus looked up at him. "What?" "Taking deep breaths," John said. "Sounds simple, right? But it really works. When your body is stressed, breathing helps calm everything down. Want to try it with me?" Marcus nodded. "Okay," John said. "Breathe in slowly while I count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold it for a second. And breathe out slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it again." They did the breathing exercise together several times. Marcus felt some of the tight panic in his chest start to ease. It did not make his fear go away, but it made it more manageable. He could think a little more clearly now instead of just drowning in worry. "Better?" John asked. "A little," Marcus admitted. "Good," John said. "Your grandpa needs you to be strong right now. Not because you have to be some kind of superhero, but just because staying calm will help you make good decisions. And you're really good at making good decisions. You proved that today." The ambulance finally pulled up to the emergency entrance of the hospital. The back doors flew open, and more medical people were waiting there. They pulled the stretcher out quickly, and suddenly everyone was moving fast and talking in medical terms that Marcus did not understand. He tried to follow, but a nurse gently stopped him. "You can't go back there right now, honey," she said kindly. "The doctors need to examine your grandfather and run some tests. You'll be able to see him soon, I promise. Let's get you to the waiting room." "I want to stay with him," Marcus said, his voice rising in panic. John stepped in smoothly. "It's okay, Marcus. This is how hospitals work. They need to help your grandpa first, and they can do that better without people in the way. We'll wait right here, and the minute they say we can see him, we'll go. I promise I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait with you the whole time." The nurse led them to a waiting area with uncomfortable plastic chairs and old magazines on a table. A TV in the corner played the news with the sound turned down low. There were a few other people scattered around the room, all looking tired and worried. Marcus recognized that look now. These were people waiting for news about someone they loved. John helped Marcus call someone from his school emergency contact list. They reached Marcus's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, who had been listed as a backup contact. She said she would come to the hospital right away and help with anything Marcus needed. Then John made sure Marcus had water and asked if he was hungry, but the boy said he could not eat anything. His stomach was too twisted up with worry. They sat in the waiting room for what felt like forever. John kept Marcus talking about different things to distract him. They talked about school, about Marcus's friends, about the books he liked to read. John told him stories about some of the movies he had made, and some of the funny things that had happened on set. He talked about his work with Make-A-Wish and other charities, about all the brave kids he had met over the years. You know what those kids all have in common? John asked. What? Marcus said. They're fighters, John said. Every single one of them faces something scary and hard, but they keep going anyway. They find reasons to smile and laugh even when things are tough. They're the real heroes, not people like me who pretend to be heroes in movies. And you're one of those fighters too, Marcus. You didn't give up today. You found a way to solve an impossible problem. Marcus looked down at his hands. I was so scared, he whispered. I thought Grandpa was going to die. I thought I was going to be all alone. Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave, John said. Brave means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. And that's exactly what you did. Mrs. Henderson arrived about an hour later. She was a kind woman in her 50s with gray hair and glasses. She hugged Marcus tight when she saw him. Oh, sweetie, I came as soon as I heard. How are you holding up? Marcus shrugged. He did not know how to answer that question. Mrs. Henderson thanked John for staying with Marcus. She seemed a little starstruck to be talking to someone famous, but she kept her focus on Marcus, which John appreciated. She had brought Marcus's homework from school, and also a change of clothes and his toothbrush from his house. She had the spare key that William had given her years ago for emergencies. I brought Grandpa some clothes too, she said, for when he's ready to leave the hospital. Marcus felt grateful that she said when and not if. He needed to believe that his grandfather would get better, that they would go home together. More time passed. 1 hour became 2, then 3. The sun outside the hospital windows began to sink lower in the sky. Marcus's drone was still sitting in the clearing where it had landed, and his controller and tablet were still in his backpack, which the paramedics had grabbed and brought to the hospital. Everything felt strange and surreal, like a dream that Marcus could not wake up from. Finally, a doctor came out to the waiting room. She was young, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and tired eyes. She looked around and asked, "Family of William Chen?" Marcus jumped to his feet. John and Mrs. Henderson stood up with him. They walked over to the doctor together. "I'm Dr. Patel," the woman said. "Are you William's grandson?" Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Dr. Patel knelt down so she was at eye level with Marcus. "Your grandfather is stable," she said, and Marcus felt like he could breathe again for the first time in hours. He had a heart attack, which is very serious, but he's getting the treatment he needs now. We've given him medications to help his heart, and we're monitoring him closely. "Can I see him?" Marcus asked. "Soon," Dr. Patel said. "He's sleeping right now. We gave him some medicine to help him rest because rest is what his heart needs most. But when he wakes up, you can absolutely see him. I promise. Is he going to be okay?" The question came out small and scared. Dr. Patel gave him an honest look. "The next few days are important. We need to watch him carefully. But I can tell you this. He got help very quickly, and that made a huge difference. If he had been alone in that forest for much longer, we might be having a very different conversation. Someone was very smart to get help the way they did." John put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "That was Marcus. He sent an SOS signal using his drone. That's how I found them." Dr. Patel looked at Marcus with new respect. "Then you saved your grandfather's life. Good job, young man. That was quick thinking." After Dr. Patel left, Marcus finally allowed himself to cry. Not the panicked, terrified crying from the forest, but tears of relief and exhaustion. John sat with him and let him cry without trying to stop him or telling him everything was fine. Sometimes people just needed to cry. Mrs. Henderson went to get them all some food from the hospital cafeteria. John's phone kept buzzing with messages and calls, but he ignored most of them. His assistant had rescheduled his appointments, and the Make-A-Wish Foundation had sent a message saying they understood completely and would arrange a new visit with Tommy soon. Dave, the helicopter pilot, showed up at the hospital around dinner time. He brought Marcus's backpack with the drone and controller carefully packed inside. "Figured you'd want this back," Dave said with a smile. "That's one special piece of equipment you've got there." Marcus took the backpack gratefully. The drone was dusty and the battery was dead, but it had done its job. It had saved Grandpa William's life. More hours passed. Marcus dozed off in his chair, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the day. When he woke up, it was dark outside the hospital windows. John was still there, now talking quietly with Mrs. Henderson about Marcus's school schedule and making sure someone could stay with the boy while William was in the hospital. A nurse came to tell them that William was awake and asking for Marcus. The boy was on his feet immediately, suddenly wide awake. The nurse led them down a long hallway to the intensive care unit. She explained that William had a lot of wires and tubes attached to him, but not to be scared. All of those things were helping him get better. Marcus stepped into the hospital room and saw his grandfather lying in the bed. William looked small and fragile under the white sheets, nothing like the strong man who had hiked with him that morning. But his eyes were open, and when he saw Marcus, a weak smile appeared on his face. "Grandpa," Marcus said, rushing to the bedside. William's voice was hoarse and quiet. "Hey, kiddo, heard you saved my life." Marcus grabbed his grandfather's hand carefully, avoiding the IV tubes. "I was so scared." "I know," William whispered. "But you were brave. You were smart. You used what I taught you. I'm so proud of you, Marcus. So proud." Tears ran down Marcus's cheeks again. "I thought you were going to die. I thought I was going to lose you like I lost Mom and Dad." William squeezed his hand with what little strength he had. "I'm still here, and I'm going to get better. We've got too many more Saturdays ahead of us. Too many more adventures." Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. William's eyes moved past Marcus to where John was standing quietly by the door. "You're John Cena," he said with surprise. John smiled and stepped forward. "Yes, sir. I happened to be flying over when I saw your grandson's SOS signal. He's quite a kid you've got there." "Best kid in the world," William said softly. "Thank you for helping him. For helping us." "It was my honor," John said sincerely. 3 days passed slowly in the hospital. Marcus spent almost every waking hour in the chair next to his grandfather's bed. Mrs. Henderson brought him clothes and homework, and John visited every single day, sometimes twice a day. On the second day, John brought a gift, a brand new professional-grade drone, much better than the one Marcus owned, with advanced features and longer battery life. "I can't accept this," Marcus said, staring at the expensive box. "It's too much." "Yes, you can," John said firmly but kindly. "Your drone saved a life. That makes it a hero just like you. And heroes deserve rewards. Besides, I already bought it, so you might as well take it." Marcus opened the box with shaking hands. The drone inside was beautiful, sleek and black with carbon fiber parts and powerful LED lights. It came with extra batteries, a professional controller, and a tablet with advanced programming software. Marcus had dreamed of owning a drone like this, but never thought he actually would. "Thank you," Marcus whispered, looking up at John with wide eyes. "Thank you so much." "You're welcome, buddy," John said. "But I have one condition. You have to teach me how to fly it, deal?" Marcus laughed for the first time in 3 days. "Deal." William was getting stronger each day. The medication was working and his heart was healing. The doctor said he had been very lucky. A few more minutes without help, and the outcome could have been very different. They told him he would need to take better care of his health, eat better, exercise more carefully, and take his medications on time. William promised he would. He had too much to live for to be careless with his life. On the third day, Dr. Patel came in with news. "We're moving you out of intensive care," she told William. "You're doing much better. In a few more days, if everything continues to improve, you might be able to go home." Marcus felt like a huge weight had lifted off his shoulders. His grandfather was really going to be okay. They would go home together. They would have more Saturdays, more adventures, more time together. The story of what happened in the forest had spread quickly. Local news stations had picked it up, and then national news. The story of a 10-year-old boy who used his drone to send an SOS signal, and the famous wrestler who saw it from the sky and came to help, captured people's hearts. Reporters called the hospital asking for interviews. The hospital staff kept them away to protect William's privacy and let him recover in peace. But John agreed to do one interview, on the condition that the focus would be on Marcus's quick thinking and bravery, not on John himself. The interview aired on national television. John told the story of seeing the blinking SOS pattern from the helicopter and realizing someone needed help. He praised Marcus's intelligence and courage, calling him a real-life hero and one of the bravest kids I've ever met. When the interview ended, The reporter asked John what message he wanted to share with viewers. John looked directly into the camera and said, "Never give up. No matter how scared you are, no matter how impossible the situation seems, there's always something you can do." Marcus proved that. He was a kid alone in the forest with no cell phone signal and a dying grandfather. Most people would have panicked. But Marcus used what he had and what he knew. He found a solution. That's what courage looks like. The interview made Marcus even more famous than he wanted to be. Kids at school started treating him differently, asking for his autograph and wanting to see his drone. Marcus did not care about being famous. He just wanted his grandfather to get better and for life to go back to normal. On the 5th day, William was moved to a regular hospital room. He could sit up in bed now and eat solid food. His color had returned and his smile was stronger. Marcus brought his homework to the hospital and did it at the small table by the window while his grandfather rested. Sometimes they watched TV together or played card games. Grandpa William taught Marcus a new game called Rummy, and Marcus taught his grandfather how to play a simple game on the tablet. John continued to visit, usually in the evening after his work was done for the day. He and William had long conversations about the military, about helicopters, about raising children. William told John stories from his years in service, and John told stories from his years in wrestling and movies. Marcus listened to these conversations, feeling grateful that his grandfather had made a new friend. On one of these visits, John brought someone with him. It was Tommy, the 7-year-old boy from the Make-A-Wish Foundation. John had finally been able to do the rescheduled visit, and he thought Tommy and Marcus might like to meet each other. Tommy was small and thin from his cancer treatments, but his eyes were bright with excitement when he met Marcus. "You're the drone hero," Tommy said in awe. "I saw you on TV." Marcus felt his cheeks turn red. "I just did what I had to do." "John says you're brave," Tommy said. "He says you never gave up." "That's his motto," Marcus said with a smile. "Never give up." "It's my motto too," Tommy said proudly, pointing to his John Cena t-shirt where those words were printed in big letters. The two boys talked while John and William watched from nearby. Despite their different situations, the boys found common ground. They both loved technology, both liked building things, both admired John Cena. They exchanged email addresses and promised to stay in touch. After Tommy and his mother left, William said to John, "You do good work with those kids." "They teach me more than I teach them," John replied honestly. "Kids like Tommy and Marcus, they show me what real strength looks like. I just pretend to be strong in the ring. They actually are strong in real life." A week after the heart attack, Dr. Patel gave William permission to go home. He would need to rest for several more weeks and come back for regular checkups. He would need to take new medications and change his diet. But he was well enough to leave the hospital and recover at home. Marcus was so excited he could barely sit still. John came to help them on the day they were discharged. He drove them home in his rental car since William was not allowed to drive yet. Mrs. Henderson had cleaned their house and stocked the refrigerator with healthy food. Neighbors had sent cards and flowers. It felt good to be home. Over the next few weeks, as William recovered, Marcus took care of his grandfather. He made sure William took his pills on time, helped prepare heart-healthy meals, and kept him company. They could not go on their Saturday hikes yet, but they sat in the backyard and flew Marcus's new drone together. William taught Marcus more about programming and electronics, and Marcus showed his grandfather the advanced features of the expensive new drone. John stayed in touch, calling every few days to check on William's recovery. He sent books and magazines to keep them entertained. And when he learned that William's medical bills were piling up despite having insurance, John quietly paid off everything. When William found out and tried to protest, John refused to discuss it. "You served your country," John said. "You raised a remarkable grandson. You both faced something terrifying and came through it with courage. Let me do this small thing, please." William had tears in his eyes when he finally accepted. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. For saving our lives, for being there, for caring. It's what decent people do," John said simply. "We help each other." The story continued to spread. A major news magazine did a feature article on Marcus, William, and John. The article talked about courage, about quick thinking in emergencies, and about how technology could save lives in unexpected ways. A drone company reached out to Marcus and asked if they could use his story in their safety campaign. They wanted to create an SOS drone protocol that could be programmed into their drones for emergency situations. Marcus worked with the company's engineers to develop the protocol. It was a special mode that users could activate in emergencies. The drone would automatically fly to maximum altitude, send out GPS coordinates, activate a loud alarm, and flash SOS patterns with all available lights. The company called it the Marcus Protocol and made it a standard feature in all their new models. Schools started teaching about Marcus's story in their emergency preparedness classes. Teachers used it as an example of creative problem solving and staying calm under pressure. Some schools even started drone clubs where kids could learn about technology and emergency signaling. Marcus was invited to speak at several of these clubs, though he always felt nervous talking in front of crowds. 3 months after the incident, when William was fully recovered, they finally returned to their special clearing in the forest at Laurel Ridge. This time they brought John with them. They also brought a satellite phone that John had bought for them just in case, and they brought Marcus's new drone, fully charged and ready. They stood in the clearing together, the three of them, and looked up at the sky. It was another beautiful Saturday, clear and blue, just like the day of the heart attack. But this time there was no emergency, no panic, no fear. Just 3 friends enjoying nature together. Marcus launched the drone and made it climb high above the trees. But instead of the SOS pattern, this time the LED light spelled out different words. Thank you. The letters blinked in the sky, visible for miles around. Thank you to John for seeing the signal. Thank you to the paramedics who saved William's life. Thank you to everyone who had helped them through this difficult time. William put his arm around Marcus's shoulders. I'm proud of you, son, he said quietly. Not just for what you did that day, but for who you are every day. Your parents would be proud too. Marcus leaned against his grandfather, feeling safe and happy. He had almost lost Grandpa William, but they had been given a second chance. He was not going to waste it. They would have many more Saturdays together, many more adventures, and Marcus would make sure his grandfather took care of himself, took his medicine, and stayed healthy. John stood a little apart, giving them their moment together. He pulled out his phone and took a picture of the grandfather and grandson silhouetted against the sky, with the drone hovering above them like a small guardian angel. This was what mattered in life, John thought. Not fame or money or championships, connection, love, family. Being there for each other when it mattered most. Later that day, they hiked back to the parking lot together, taking their time and stopping often to rest. William was slower than before, more careful about his limits. But he was alive and healing, getting stronger every day. At the truck, they packed up their gear. Marcus made sure the drone was secure in its case, the same way he always did. As they drove home, they talked about their next adventure. Maybe fishing at the lake when the weather got warmer. Maybe a trip to a museum in the city. Maybe just working on a model airplane in the garage. It did not matter what they did, as long as they did it together. That evening, John posted the picture he had taken on his social media accounts. He wrote, "Real heroes don't always wear capes or step into a wrestling ring. Sometimes they're 10-year-old kids who stay calm in a crisis and use everything they've learned to save someone they love. Marcus Chen is a true hero, and I'm honored to know him and his grandfather William. Remember, never give up. There's always a way if you're brave enough to find it." The post got millions of views and thousands of comments from people around the world saying how inspired they were by Marcus's story. Parents said they were teaching their kids about emergency preparedness. Teachers said they were using the story in their classrooms. Drone enthusiasts said they were programming SOS protocols into their devices. But Marcus did not care about any of that. He was just happy that his grandfather was okay, that they were home safe, and that they had tomorrow and the next day, and all the days after that to spend together. That was all that mattered. That night, as Marcus got ready for bed, he looked at the old drone sitting on his shelf. It was dusty and dented, the battery still dead from that desperate day in the forest. He would never fix it or fly it again. Instead, he would keep it exactly as it was, a reminder of what he had done, of the day he saved his grandfather's life. William came to Marcus's room to say goodnight, like he did every evening. He sat on the edge of Marcus's bed and smoothed the boy's hair back from his forehead. "Love you, Grandpa," Marcus said sleepily. "Love you too, kiddo," William replied. "More than you'll ever know." "Thank you for saving my life." "Thank you for being worth saving," Marcus said. William smiled and kissed his grandson's forehead. He turned off the light and left the room. But Marcus could hear him moving around the house, doing the normal evening things. Washing dishes, locking doors, taking his evening medications, all the normal, wonderful, everyday sounds of life continuing, and Marcus fell asleep feeling grateful and blessed, knowing that tomorrow would bring another day with his grandfather, another chance to learn and grow and be together. The adventure in the forest was over, but their life together was just beginning again, stronger and more precious than ever before.